selflessness, selfishness, achievement, disappointment. How do you affect your world? By that, I mean those important to you, what you care about, loved ones and acquaintances, enemies and annoyances. Do you rub off on others? Do you feel it's positive, negative, or somewhere in between? We have our demons, we try to outrun them, and we have strengths and gifts to provide to the world. We can help others, we can help ourselves, or we can do what we can. Everyone can benefit or be on the short end of the stick. I think there's a lot of middle ground to exist in if we're talking real life. The right story, however, can inform us what these extremes look like. They can present an image of change and nuance between two positions on a spectrum. They can show us the effects they have on our own personal worlds through dramatized lenses. Better Call Saul explores the negatives so well. It's a masterpiece, and one of my favorite shows on the air right now. If Breaking Bad explored a sort of internal decay in Walter White, Better Call Saul seems to explore the deterioration from Jimmy or Saul outward into his world. He's not bad. It's just he had takeaways and lessons from his childhood, along with recent failures of those around him that led him to make some poor decisions. You can't help but follow the journey once you're in, and I'd like to talk about it more if you'd have me. I'd like to talk about Better Call Saul. Part of the great tragedy of the show is that we know, for a lot of the main cast, where they're gonna end up. This is a prequel, after all. For all their progress and attempts, we know where characters like Jimmy, Mike, and Gus are gonna end up. Their fates are sealed. For them, we don't watch for what'll happen. We watch to see why they are who they are by the time we see them in Breaking Bad. And that's just as rewarding. That being said, there are characters whose fates we aren't aware of to start the show, like Kim, Jimmy's romantic interest, Chuck, his older brother, Nacho, an associate and client, and tons of others. We may not know where they end up for sure, but we know that we don't want certain things to happen to them. We know their stakes, and that's what's so compelling. We've become invested in these characters. We're introduced to them through the lens of Jimmy. That's the line between everyone that ties it all together. So when Jimmy makes these choices that affects those around him, they do decide on how to react, but we're left to frustration with Jimmy for bringing the situation to them. It makes me ask myself, what are the consequences of my actions? How does it affect people I care about? Do I affect people I don't even know about? Is it a net good, bad, or neutral? We also know that where Jimmy ends up by the time of Breaking Bad, it probably means a lot of people in his life have been negatively affected as well. Knowing Saul Goodman and how he operates, we await the result through the earlier positions of the show. Jimmy's transformation is really what makes a story a great tragedy. He's someone who wants to do good. He wants to be good. He always has. He's just seen how the world can be so demoralizing, harsh, and cruel, and he has a different way of going about doing what he thinks is right until The failure of the world around him leads Jimmy to act in self-interest. His talents compromise to a negative. Certain people like Chuck and Kim in his life initially make him want to do better. He looks to be on a good path, but after that beginning portion of the story, he realizes a lot of what he looked up to is failing him. Unable to deal with that information in a healthy manner, he falls deeper into the patterns he followed before. Bruce Wayne grows up and dons the cowl, becoming Batman. Walter White becomes Heisenberg, and Jimmy McGill finally becomes Saul Goodman. He's not a criminal lawyer, he's a criminal lawyer. He knows what he wants and he knows how to get it. And whether he knows it or not, he's willing to put the well-being of those he cares about as well as that of himself on the line. Chuck is a rough look into someone gaining physical symptoms from a mental and internal unease. His rocky relationship with his younger brother Jimmy ruins him slowly over time. Yes, Jimmy brings forward some things that negatively affect him, but Chuck ultimately makes the decisions that lead him down a darker road. Kim looks like someone with a bright future, much like Jimmy. Her underlying dissatisfaction with where she is and could be makes Jimmy the perfect excuse to explore her darker side. She really goes deep down into the recesses of what she seems to have repressed in herself. Nacho's already in a world where people almost never end up somewhere good, well before he meets him, as well as Mike. They just get brought along the journey eventually. It's also compelling to watch. As mentioned before, Jimmy isn't solely responsible for the paths that these people end up taking. Far from it, in fact. Also, like said before, he has his part in presenting or expanding situations, but ultimately, it's the actions of these people in these scenarios that seal their fate and their paths. They know this. They're not really much of a second thought to it kind of people. It just really makes me think about what my actions say about me. What path am I currently on? I don't think I'll know until I have hindsight. Do you? We all have our hunches, but it's incredibly difficult to see the forest through the trees. And that's what seems to be a real problem with a lot of the people on the show. They want to achieve these goals they've set. It's just, they may even feel like they accept the potential of consequences, but when faced with the prospect of loss that they hadn't really accounted for, they'll fight to prevent it, causing more adverse situations, and so on until they face something that they just cannot overcome. They won't be ready for it. As much as they think they might be, they just won't, and it'll either break them or change them or something even darker. At this point in time, the show hasn't finished yet. It's just ended the 4th season, and the 5th will be on the way sometime in the future. I can't wait to see how all these journeys reach their conclusions and ultimately end up affecting each other more than they already have. Because with this show, it was said at the beginning, it's more about the journey than the destination. We get to learn what made these people, and that is the show's purpose, first and foremost. So, what are your thoughts on Better Call Saul? Have you seen it? How does it make you feel? Do you have a different take on the stories and the characters it presents? What does it make you think about? I'd love to know your thoughts and more in the comments. I'd also love to go more specifically into characters from the show because it's just so much more than I was able to cover in this short collection of thoughts. Feel free to let me know if you'd like that too. I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. I'll see you next week. And till then, have a great time. Thank you.